It's that time again. Welcome to the Steel City Roundtable, your home for real stories from real people, where everyone matters and all stories deserve to be told. Before we get down to the meat and potatoes of the show, we have to go over our legal disclaimer. The views and opinions expressed on the Steel City Roundtable are for entertainment and informational purposes only. We are not professionals or affiliated with any professional organizations. If you are in crisis, dial 911 immediately and seek professional help. And here are your hosts. Hey guys, welcome back to the Steel City Roundtable. I am Mark, one of your hosts. Unfortunately, my better half, Kels, is not here. She's on vacation. So we want to wish her a good trip. Hope her and her significant other enjoy yourselves, and we'll see you in a couple weeks. Mike is here today.
Yes, sir.
How you doing today, Mike?
I'm doing wonderful.
Good to you. 3 months sober now, right?
We're getting there. August 20th will be 90 days.
Awesome.
My birthday. What a good day.
Yeah, great day.
Yeah, awesome. So today we've got a great guest. This is a gentleman I met back in 2008, 2007. He is a city paramedic for 27 years?
23.
23 years.
Whoa.
Worked in some of the roughest parts of the city. We have become friends over the years due to our, dealing with trauma in our own ways. And we became close friends. Mr. Jon Atkinson.
Pleasure to be here.
Oh, there we go. He's afraid of the mic.
I've never done one of these before.
Yeah, neither did I until about 15 episodes ago, and I still suck at it. So, Jon, why don't you just tell people a little bit about yourself, whatever you want to say to let people know who you are.
I'm 42 years old. Like Mark said, I've been a Pittsburgh paramedic for the last 23 years, which is where we met. I'm a paramedic for the last 2 years. I've been in our rescue division, so I work on one of our heavy rescue trucks. So in the city of Pittsburgh, our EMS system is unique in that we provide all types of technical rescue, where most cities, that's traditionally a fire department job. So we do vehicle extrication, elevator rescues, rope rescues, confined space rescues. Basically, if somebody's stuck in something and needs to get out, that's what we do.
Like my marriage.
Yeah, well, that may even be beyond my scope of practice. But
I got out of it.
in addition to being a rescue paramedic, I've been a river rescue diver since 2009. So I spend 6 months a year on our river rescue unit, which is a dual-staffed unit with Pittsburgh Police and Pittsburgh EMS divers. And then I've been a tactical paramedic on the Pittsburgh SWAT team since 2011. In addition to that, I am the president of our union. I represent the 200 or so paramedics and EMTs that are employed by the city of Pittsburgh. And then we have, I believe, 5 locals, which are smaller services that we represent here in the Pittsburgh area. And then we have one out in suburban Philadelphia and Bucks County. And on top of that, I'm also a fire chief of one of the 8 volunteer fire companies in Ross Township.
Okay. What a pedigree. So the show's over, guys. He's pretty much answered every question I had. No. So, yeah, Jon, I met Jon when I was working in the Homewood Zone 5 section of Pittsburgh, which is a very busy neighborhood. It's a very small neighborhood, but it's a very busy neighborhood. A lot of calls for, first responders to show up there, fire, paramedics, EMS, everybody, police as well. So we had met on calls, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I remember correctly, we met and we kind of had some fun on the calls back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, you have to have fun on the calls. If you can't find fun in the calls, then the calls will eat you alive.
Well, so talk about that a little bit. You've been doing this for 23 years. You do as long as I've known you.
Yeah.
And I've known you, 16 years now, 15
probably.
years about. What's it like to be a paramedic in the city of Pittsburgh? Like mentally,
Yeah, so
emotionally?
I think most people, when they think of paramedics, they think of what you see on TV. They think of, screaming lights and sirens 24/7, blood, guts, all that sort of thing. But you quickly realize that probably 75% of what you do isn't what you see on TV. It can be rather mundane. It can be, you're kind of like a social worker. You're an alcohol counselor. You're a marriage counselor. You're dealing with domestics. You're dealing with people who don't know how to navigate the healthcare system. People who have nowhere to turn for help, and so they pick up the phone and they call us for things that you or I would never imagine calling an ambulance for, but they just don't know how to get the care that they need. So a lot of what we do is not the life-saving things that come to mind when you think of what paramedics do. A lot of it is, I I can't manage my diabetes. You know, I'm out of my blood pressure medicine, and it's Friday, and I haven't had my medicine in a week, and I'm hypertensive now. So a lot of what we do are these kind of mundane, like primary care medicine type things. And obviously, we do go on the shootings and the stabbings and the overdoses and the car accidents and all that stuff. But anytime I meet somebody who doesn't work in public safety and they find out I'm a paramedic, I get the same reaction all the time. Oh man, your job must be crazy. Like,
Yeah.
and certainly I've gone on some just insane calls, but most people believe that that's what we do all day, and it's not. We get those calls. I mean, obviously those things happen, and that's what we deal with. But most of what we're spent doing is not life and death situations.
I mean, we're going to talk about one incident in specific later. We'll get into that a little bit more. But yeah, that's very similar to police work. You know, a lot of cops out there, they think that they're going to be running and gunning all day long, right? They get on a job and 99% of the time is answering problems and solving problems. So it's the only difference between being a paramedic and being a cop in my mind is that, you help people, you fix people physically, with the traumas that they go through. You go to a shooting, you go to a stabbing, whatever. Cops get to a stabbing and go, I'm calling a medic. We pass that off to you guys, but I have a lot of respect for what you do because I've seen you in action, dude. And let me just say this, no bullshit, friend or not, you are on fire when you're working.
I appreciate it.
You're straight up no bullshit guy. And you carry a gun now, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's it like to become a paramedic? Like, what are the steps? I mean, it's probably pretty similar to the police department with the testing process, I'm sure.
Yeah, so to become a paramedic, so if you're to become a police officer for the city of Pittsburgh, they'll hire a civilian with no prior training or experience, and then they'll put you through the police academy. We're a little bit different in that the city of Pittsburgh does not train you to become a paramedic. So you have to have all of your training and education beforehand. So you have to become an EMT basic. So a lot of people don't understand the difference between an EMT and a paramedic. So an EMT basic is about 3 months worth of training, and it's just like basic anatomy, it's CPR, it's basic first aid. They can't really do anything invasive. There's no IVs, there's no medication. They're not doing advanced airways. They're not doing EKGs and those sorts of things. So you become an EMT basic after about 3 months worth of training, and then you go to paramedic school, which is the equivalent of a college year. So it's
Pretty intensive.
Yeah, so it's late August, through May, and it's probably 50 hours or so a week of classroom you do. I went through the University of Pittsburgh Center for Emergency Medicine. So we had an 8-hour classroom day and a 12-hour classroom day, and then we did a lot of clinical rotations. So we're doing rotations in the emergency department, trauma rotations, a lot of rotations on ambulances, OB-GYN, surgical rotations, airway management rotations, anesthesia.
So literally, you become a jack of all trades.
Pretty much,
You pretty much get a taste of everything because that's what you're going to do when you get in the back of that wagon.
Yeah.
Okay.
And when we're done, we can do, we can get EKGs off people and interpret EKGs. We can see different heart rhythm disturbances. We can see if somebody's having a heart attack right in front of us. We've got probably 25 or 30 different medications that we can administer intravenously for different conditions. We can place endotracheal tubes. So it's a lot of information that's crammed into you over a relatively short period of time.
I mean, shit, I was losing my mind when I had to do that week of, first aid training in the police academy. Like, I was like, oh, God, that's the first thing you got to do, right? Like, that's the first thing they did in our academy was the basic first responder medical.
Yeah.
Like, oh, put a Band-Aid on it, sucking chest wound, stuff like that, Now, with our interactions, I mean, we went to a lot of shootings, a lot of stabbings, a lot of domestics, a lot of violent calls. Yeah. And you talked about how a lot of it is the mundane, like 99% boring, 1% crazy.
Yeah.
What's it like for you when you get that call where the shit's hit the fan and you got to get there and you're going to have to do some serious fucking work?
I think that, I try to boil everything down to, I try to simplify everything. stop the bleeding, make sure they have an airway. So I try to not overthink things. I try to simplify things, and I found that is a good approach for me, to make sure that I'm doing what needs to be done when it needs to be done, as quickly as possible.
So the old adage, keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, follow the steps, follow your prompts.
Yep.
What I'm more worried about, what I'm more curious about is what's it like physically and emotionally and mentally on you when you get that call for, multiple people shot or a man shot, or in our case, that call, that was traumatic as hell.
Sure.
What does a paramedic go through? Like, the whole range of emotions and because I know as a cop, like if I got a really serious call, like I didn't get nervous, but I got super uber focused.
Right. I think the same thing happens for us, and I'm sure you can relate. You really focus on the task at hand. You focus on doing what it is that you need to do, and then once the call is, for us, we get them to the hospital, and then you have this holy fuck kind of moment after the fact, where everything kind of settles in.
It becomes real.
It becomes real.
Yeah, it's almost like you're almost like a robot. You're almost like a machine when you go.
Yeah,
to
you're
calls.
just you're in the zone. You're focused, and you're doing what needs to be done, and it becomes I think it's kind of methodical, right?
Yeah.
So you're doing what needs to be done. It's very methodical, and there's not a whole lot of. It sounds crazy, but there's not a whole lot of thought in it, right? Like you're just
Muscle memory, really,
kinda
for you guys.
You're kind of on autopilot, and then once you get a minute and you've gotten the patient to the hospital, then it's like, holy, can I say fuck?
You just say fuck,
Yeah, it's
shit,
like,
damn it,
it's
whatever.
You
it's
just
like-
did.
Yeah,
Yes, you can. You just
yeah.
did.
But it's like, holy fuck, I can't believe we just did that. And that can be a good thing. And then there's holy fuck, like I can't believe that we did everything that we did, and it didn't make a fucking difference.
Yeah.
And I think that I think is the hard part. When everything goes right, you have a bad call, and you do everything that you can, and there's no hiccups. Like everything works. Everything, you get the IV on the first attempt, you get the airway, you stop the bleeding, and despite your best efforts, this person dies. And that I think is the hard part for us. Kind of processing that, trying to accept that despite your best efforts, you got there quickly, you everything worked right, you did everything that you could, and people are still going to die.
So how do you deal with that? How do you personally deal with that?
I don't know if I'm fucked up in the head or not, but I'm able to kind of separate myself from that. There's a lot of people who have a bad call and they're done, and they go and they find something else to do outside of this business. There are people, unfortunately, who have taken their own lives as a result of one bad call, or maybe just the cumulative of bad calls just building up in them over the course of their careers. We have public safety has a very high rate of substance abuse. There's a very high rate of self-harm. I've been fortunate in that I've not had the psychological effects that others have had. I don't have depression. I don't have anxiety. I'm not bipolar, but there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that exists in the folks who do this kind of work. I do drink regularly. I do drink probably more than I should. But I think for me, when I have a particularly bad call, for me, what helps me is just talking to the guys that were there, whether it's a guy like you. I mean, obviously you and I have shared our thoughts over a few drinks, and my girlfriend is a Pittsburgh paramedic as well, so she's a very good person to talk to because she knows what it's about. And I think for me, having people that understand what I'm going through, I couldn't imagine going home to an accountant or a secretary or a teacher or something and trying to explain that I just had a dude with his fucking head cut off at work or something like that. Yeah. And I've been throughout all the girlfriends that you've known, they've all been, medics,
Yeah.
nurses. They've all been in the field, and to be able to go home and just kind of talk about what happened that day with somebody who understands, from a firsthand perspective, because they deal with it too. For me, that's really been very helpful for me, and kind of getting through the the shit that we deal with at work.
Now, can't that be like a double-edged sword? Like, like you do this for 12 or whatever hours you work a day, and then you go home and you're talking about it at home. Like, for me personally, like, about my diagnosis with mental health, right? PTSD, depression, anxiety, all that stuff. I was unable to separate.
Right.
I was unable to separate the good, the bad, and separate it from my personal life. You are different. Like, in the years that I've known you, you've always been that guy that you could. There's only been one call that I know of that's really affected you.
Yeah, there's been a couple, but yeah.
Yeah, but like the one that I know of. Sure. So, folks, if you don't know what I'm talking about, 4409 in Pittsburgh, 3 police officers got assassinated by some piece of shit who is now serving 3 life sentences, and he should be dead. But that is Pennsylvania for you. I'm not going to go liberal, Democrat, Republican here because I know how you feel. But yeah, Steve Shulo, Paul Shulo, Steve Maley, and Eric Kelly got murdered, and Jon treated those officers. So, that was the one call that I know of that has affected you over time.
Yeah. Still does.
Yeah, I mean, it's oh my God, it's so long ago now.
15 years. It's crazy.
It's crazy. And yet, for the first 10, we got together every 4th of April to partake in memories. And I finally got to the point where I was like, why do I keep doing this? Because it kept up, like, my drinking was out of control. We both know that.
Yeah.
And I got to the point where I couldn't really, I couldn't see the point of doing that anymore.
Yeah.
Now that I got sober, I want to do that again.
Right.
Because now I'm doing it for the right reason, So talking about these guys who are straight up badass heroes, talk about that call a little bit in whatever aspect you want.
Sure. So that day, I believe it was either a Saturday or a Sunday morning. I think it was a Sunday morning. I had worked overtime the night before, so I was on daylight. I was working 7 to 3. I'd worked a 3 to 11 overtime shift with my partner, a guy named Eric Berzotto. You know Eric.
I know him. Great dude.
So we had both worked overtime the night before, and I was going out after work for somebody's birthday. Can't remember who. And I said something to Eric that I was probably going to call off because I was going out after work. So I'm working 7A to 11P. I was going out.
Yeah.
I was going to call off the next day. And he said, come on, man. It's a Sunday.
Easy day.
Yeah, right. It's going to be quiet.
Don't ever say those words.
Yeah. You're going to call off, and I'm going to get stuck with some fucking clown on overtime, whatever. Like, you know how it is. When you're at work, you want to work with your partners, right?
Yeah.
So he convinces me to come into work. So I come into work. I try to get to work, 10, 15 minutes early. I come in at 5 till, and I'm hungover. And I come in, and all I want to do is plop down in my recliner and put my feet up and get a little bit of a nap in. And working in Homewood, you hear police cars flying past the station all the time. But I heard a police car going past the station like I've never heard before. I mean, engine screaming, siren screaming, and I'm like, fuck, I wonder what's going on. So I clicked over to Channel 3, and the first thing I heard was somebody screaming that there were officers shot. I had no idea where. But I immediately jumped up out of the chair. Eric jumped up out of the chair, and we ran to the truck because we knew we were going. And then we get the dispatch that there were officers shot on Fairfield Street. Mm-hmm. And I kind of knew where Fairfield Street was. I knew it was up in Stanton Heights, but I didn't know exactly. It's not a street that we get calls on. It's not Frankstown. It's not Bennett Street. Yeah. It was in Medic 6's district, which is one district over from us, still in Zone 5. And Eric Berzotto was new to the area. He just bit over from Medic 2. And I remember getting in the truck, and he was driving, and he's driving the fucking wheels off of this truck, and he has no idea where he's going. And I remember going up Stanton Avenue, and I remember seeing police cars ahead of us. They're trying to get there as fast as they can, and they're hitting the side streets, and like we're going as fast as we can this way, and I'm seeing police cars flying left and right, crossing
total chaos.
Negley, crossing Highland, and I'm like, man, we're gonna get
lit up.
Yeah, we're gonna get lit up. But so we made it into the area, and there was an alleyway that ran behind Fairfield Street. So they wanted us to stage like 2 blocks up the street. It was really chaotic. We didn't know how many officers were shot. We didn't know what their conditions are. And so we found an alleyway that ran, if you're coming down Fairfield Street, the scene was on the left-hand side of the street. So we found the alleyway that ran behind that side of Fairfield Street. And
So you actually came up behind the house.
yeah, so we ended up
Because I remember that
alleyway.
scene.
We
It was
go
a dead
down.
end street. It was a dead end street. There was nothing after that
Right.
street, and then there's an alleyway behind the house.
Yeah, so we ended up, I can't remember the name of the side street, but we come down to the nearest cross street, and now we're on the same side of the street, and I believe that house sat 3 houses from the corner.
I believe you're right.
And so we position there, and we can't see the house. But what we can see is there are 2 marked police cars, and then there was a white Chevy Trailblazer SS that
Eric's.
was
Yeah,
Eric
Eric
Kelly's.
Kelly's.
And apparently, we had no idea what had transpired before we got there. All we knew is that officers were shot. Apparently, Eric Kelly was on his way home, lived a few blocks away, still had his radio on, had heard that there was an officer-involved shooting there, and he responded off duty.
Yeah, he was just coming back from working a secondary
Yeah.
employment detail,
Right,
and in his
right.
personal vehicle, like he says, still in his uniform, and that's a true hero right there. The guy's done working for the day, and it just shows that when shit hits the fan, everybody comes out.
Right. And so we get there, and I can see Eric Kelly is down in the street, and he is off like the passenger rear corner of his car. And another police car pulls up. It was Tim McManaway. He gets out, and he goes over to try to help Eric Kelly, and the shooter opens fire on him.
And you saw all this.
I saw this. And he gets hit in the hand, and Eric Kelly's down, and he was, these guys are maybe, I don't know, 40 feet away from us, so not that far. And the shooter is sporadically firing on them, and there's so much going on the radio, and I'm trying to communicate with Tim McManaway. I want to know what kind of shape Eric Kelly's in. So we actually had him go over to a different channel that nobody's on,
Yeah.
so that we can talk. And initially, Eric was conscious. He was hit, I believe, in his left flank, left hip area, and he was able to crawl around, to take cover behind his car. Tim kind of pulled him further back. Tim was shot in the hand, and so Eric Barazzato and I are trying to figure out what are we going to do.
Yeah, you got to do something. It's just,
Right.
am I going to get killed doing it?
Yeah, and I don't have any children. Eric has 3, and so we're trying to figure out as time passes, it's obvious to us that Eric Kelly's in real danger. We're talking to Tim on the radio, and Tim's saying, he's unconscious now. Now his breathing's getting labored, and so we're Eric Barazzato and I are trying to figure out what do we do? Do we try to throw our medical equipment to Tim and have him try to do something?
Well, I mean, you're not carrying a firearm, so it's
No.
at this point in time. So you're open game
Yeah.
as soon as you step out from your vehicle.
So we're trying to formulate a plan. Can we throw some medical stuff out there for him to try to stop the bleeding? Can we try to talk him through starting an IV? As crazy as that sounds, and so we decided that none of that was going to work, and we decided that one of us should probably go out there and try to do something. And I don't know why we did this, because we're not the kind of guys that tell our bosses what we're going to do, but we told our district chief, who was on scene, that one of us was going to go out and try to treat this officer. And our boss got on the radio and said, absolutely not. The scene is not safe. This guy's actively shooting. You guys can't go out there. And I don't know why we listened. I don't know why we even told him what we were going to do. Like, we're the kind of guys that just do what needs to be done. And we followed the orders. We didn't go out there. And ultimately, a police wagon showed up, and I believe it was Steve Meskin from the SWAT team. They ended up getting bulletproof vests off of our supervisor. He carries some extra, soft body armor, and they put those vests up in the window and along the driver's door. And Steve Meskin with his rifle walked next to the wagon. It was one of the vans, and he walked out there, and he was able to get. He and Tim McManaway were able to get Eric Kelly into the back of the wagon. Not a single shot was fired. And then they backed the wagon up to where we were, and we jumped in the back of the wagon. At that point, Eric Kelly was in cardiac arrest. And so we began CPR on him. And then they drove us around the corner to a medic unit, and we passed him off to the medic unit, and they transported him to Presby, and unfortunately he didn't make it. And so I think for me, just for that, the hardest part for me was, we go on shootings all the time, and I don't pass judgment on these people that are shot. I don't care, but most of them are, they're drug dealers, they're gangbangers or whatever, and we roll in, we grab them, we're able to instantly get to them. We can instantly, begin treating them. We get them to the hospital, and most of them live.
Yeah, because you're not showing up to an active shooting.
Right, and here's a guy that I know. I knew Eric Kelly.
Yeah.
I'd worked out there. At that point, I had been at Medic 1 for probably 4 or 5 years in that neighborhood, working that zone. And so I'd been on countless calls with Eric and Steve and Paul. And, it's like this guy's right here. He's 30, 40 feet away from me, and I can't do a fucking thing but sit here and watch this guy bleed to death.
Well, I'm not going to lie. My personal opinion, I think you did the right thing. By calling it in, because this was a once in a lifetime, hopefully never in a lifetime call.
Yeah.
Where, and this is just me being your friend, you go out there, you become a potential victim. You know what I mean? Without protection, without any fire, without any suppression,
Sure.
Suppressive fire, without any backup, without anybody to protect you. And at that point, the city didn't have rifles. The officers didn't have rifles on scene.
Right.
They had their handguns. So they maybe had 3 magazines, talking 45 rounds maybe.
Yeah.
So they're trying to return, when the officers start showing up, they're trying to return fire with, stones against a guy that's got rifles and multiple boxes of ammunition. So in my opinion, you go out there, we may lose you too. So I know it's something that you fight with, but I'm just telling you as your friend,
No,
I think you did the right thing because you're still here.
It was the right call, but it's hard for me to not feel selfish about it. Eric Kelly didn't care about that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, Eric Kelly knew the guys needed help, and he showed up.
Yeah.
He knew what he was getting into.
Yeah.
And so I think the part that I've had a hard time with is, like, why am I prioritizing myself over these guys? They didn't.
Yeah.
Eric Kelly went in there knowing what he was getting into, and I stood there and watched the guy bleed to death. Now, I know from, his injuries, it wasn't a survivable injury. I know that. I mean, there was nothing that I was going to do to save him there. But still, it's something that I've had to deal with, thinking that I failed him.
Yeah. I mean, this scenario fucked me up for a long time.
Yeah.
Because I worked in the same station as them. They all worked night turn. I worked I think I was working 4 to midnight at that time. So I saw them every night, and I dealt with them every night. Steve and I went to the academy together. So we used to go golfing, and he was a crazy motherfucker. But, Eric Kelly used to try to sell me his rims for his Trailblazer every freaking shift, because I drove a more, I didn't drive the SS.
Right.
But I had a white Trailblazer, so every night I come into work, he's like, "Yo, Bones, you gonna buy these tires off me?" I'm like, "Nah, man, I ain't got the money,
Yeah.
And I had worked a double, and I was home in bed sleeping because I think I got released maybe a half hour, 45 minutes before it happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I was never able to really deal with it. You and I are cut from different stones. Me, I've always been a guy that wears his emotions on his sleeves, and shit bothers me and it gets to me. But you know, like you said before, you're a little different. Like you're able to compartmentalize things. You're able to deal with things. Maybe not in a healthy way sometimes, but you're able to deal with it. What did you learn from that situation about yourself?
That's a good question. I don't know what I learned about myself from that. I was I think that was the first time that I've ever been like really fucked up by a call. I was supposed to start river rescue training the next day, that Monday. Actually, I'm sorry, it happened on a Saturday morning. They gave me Sunday off. I was supposed to be in river rescue training Monday, and Eric Berzotto was going to be in the class with me. And so I remember after the call, I mean, we transported Paul Schulo and Steve Maley to the medical examiner's office. We had Jason Lando and Kristen Zett rode with us in the medic unit. And that was really important to me. I remember once the SWAT team got there and they were able to get those guys off the porch and they brought them over to us and they were deceased. There was nothing that could be done. And we had them in the back of our medic unit. I remember the medical examiner's office showed up and there was some discussion. Medical examiner's guys were there. They were taking some photographs in the back of our truck. And then there was some discussion about how their bodies were going to be moved from the medic unit and placed in the medical examiner's vans. And I remember Jason Lando, who I believe was a sergeant at the time, said, absolutely not. These guys work with these medics every day. It should be them who take them down there. And that was a really, really impactful for me, you know. And so they rode, Jason and Kristen rode with us down to the medical examiner's office, and we went back to the station afterwards. We were down there for a while, but, you know, we got back to the station afterwards, and obviously there's reports and stuff that need to be done. And, you know, we had a bottle of this Icelandic liquor. We get these paramedic students from Iceland that come over and do their clinical rotations with us, and they always bring us this just nasty Icelandic shit called Brennivin, and it is we could fucking take the finish off this table with this stuff. It's disgusting, but we had it. we had a bottle of it at the station, and so we cracked that thing open, and Berzotto and I drank that while we wrote these reports, and I remember going home and I drank some more, and for some reason I felt like I had to go back to the scene, and so I drove back to the scene that night, and I had a bottle with me, and I remember pulling up to the scene, and obviously, you know, there's a bunch of cops there, and I pulled up, and a police officer came over to kick me out, and then he realized who I was, and he was like, you know, you can you know, stay as long as you need to, and you know, so I hung out there for a little bit. I don't know why. But I hung out there for a little bit and just kind of thought about the events of the day. And then I left there and I went down to the North Shore to the police memorial and, you know, drank a little bit more. And then I went home. And then the next day I was still all fucked up over the thing. And basically did nothing but fucking drink all day Sunday. And then Monday I was supposed to be in river rescue training. I can't remember what time it started, but Berzotto called me and woke me up. He's on his way to training. He calls me and he's like, "What's up, man? How you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, dude, I'm all fucked up." He's like, "What do you mean you're fucked up?" I said, "I'm fucked up." He's like, "What? I'm on my like, we start training in fucking 40 minutes. What do you mean you're fucked up?" I said, "I'm fucked up. I'm not going." He's like, "Dude, you have to go. Like, it's been 8 years. You know, you've been wanting to get on river rescue. This is your chance. Now you're not going to go." And so he convinced me to get the fuck up and, you know, get my shit together. And I went to river rescue training that day. And, you know, 9 months later, I completed the training and here I am. But, you know, what did I learn about myself through that? I'm not sure. I don't know that I learned anything about myself.
I'm sure you did. I mean, I learned something.
Maybe I didn't. I don't know it.
I mean, I learned a lot about you just talking about it today because, you know, we may have celebrated that day or mourned, however you want to put it, celebrate their lives and mourn the day, but we never really talked about it. You and I never had a conversation about, like, what you actually went through. You know, my experience was a lot different. You know, I woke up in bed to a bunch of text messages saying, you know, Paul and Steve are shot, and then Paul's dead, Steve's dead, Eric got shot. And then, you know, they gave the night turn shift like the week off to mourn with their families, and we covered their shift and the group that I was with pretty much had funeral details.
Yeah.
We went to all the funerals. And, I think if I had to do it all over again, I wish I wouldn't been part of that. Not that I didn't want to say goodbye, but I had to live in that. We had to live in that experience for like a week, like reliving it every day from the survivor's aspect, because I had a lot of survivor's guilt. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there in the police department that do. You have it, it's a real thing. It is a real fucking thing. And my inability to process it is one of the things that led to my PTSD and my heavy drinking. Yeah. Like I was always a drinker, but after that, things kind of changed. Like, you're still you. You're the same guy that I met 15 years ago. I changed. Like I became that introvert, and I didn't want to hang out unless I was going to the bar with my friends and drinking about it. And, now it's nice to be able to talk about it. Like it's nice to be able to sit here and talk about it. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted you on here is because, we share that part of history, that, you were actively involved and we all knew these guys. And, to this day, I don't think I'll ever be okay with it. I don't think I'll ever be fine with it. Like, I don't think I'll ever get over it. How do you feel? Over time, I'm sure.
Yeah, they say time heals all wounds, but there's, it's been 15 years and I can still relive every detail, the sounds, the smells, and I don't think it'll ever go away. And, it's a little, I think every year it gets a little bit easier, but I still remember Steve Maley's fucking cell phone ringing in the back of our truck. I know who it is. It's his wife. I'll never forget that. And, there are details of that day that if I live to be 300 years old, I'll never forget. And, I carry that with me, and, it is what it is. And
what do you do when you're working and some new guy comes on and somebody starts talking about, Eric Kelly or Paul Schuler or Steve Maley, and they're like, who's that?
It's
because I know it used to infuriate me.
Yeah, you have
Pittsburgh's not a big town.
It's not. You have to understand that, these new guys, they're coming into a job fresh. They're starting with a clean slate. They don't know what happened last week. They don't know what happened on 449. They don't know what happened 10 years ago. Like the big events that we lived through that kind of has left their mark on us for good or worse. They don't know about that stuff. And so, I'm happy to talk to people that want to know about it, that want to know what happened. I think it's important that people understand. I think it's important that we don't forget those guys and what happened that day. But I don't hold anything against people that don't know.
Yeah, it was a pivotal moment in the Pittsburgh Police Department.
Yeah.
Because like I said before, they didn't have rifles, so the officers were showing up with sidearms and 3-4 magazines, and they were trying not to expend their ammo, but they were trying to put suppressive fire down. They're trying to stop this guy from shooting because he's continuing to shoot. The city, unfortunately, in all their departments, is very reactive.
Yes.
They're not proactive about shit unless it saves them money.
Right.
And the police department, it took like almost a year after these guys got killed before they authorized rifles for patrolmen.
Which is crazy.
And then the city's policy was you had to carry a rifle that you were certified on that the city supplied. You shared that rifle with another person on an opposing shift, maybe 2 people on 3 different shifts. And that was the only rifle you were supposed to take out of the cupboard. And you'd sign it out every day and sign it back in. It's come tenfold since then. Now guys are able to buy their own rifles, all that shit. So it's good to see that the city continued that movement towards, arming their officers and making them more effective on the streets in situations just like that.
Yeah. And that was the watershed moment that led to paramedics being placed on the SWAT team. There had been a lot of talk about it prior to the incident, and it took 2 years after the shooting for paramedics to be added to the SWAT team, and I was in the first class.
Now I remember initially you guys couldn't carry sidearms.
Right. Well, we were trained on them. We had them, but they were kept in a fucking Pelican case on the SWAT truck.
So you had to go over and go, hey, can I have my pistol?
Yeah, we had to go find the truck, find our gun, and then
And now that's changed.
yeah, now it's changed.
Now they treat you more like part of the team.
They do.
Because I know in the beginning it was like an elitist thing. We're SWAT, you're a medic, just sit there and do what you're told.
Yeah.
And now they actually have incorporated you guys into part of the whole planning and practice and process.
Yeah, I mean, I think it could be, I think it could always be better, but
Yeah.
I think that, adding medics to a SWAT team, to a well-established SWAT team, it's like, who are these fucking guys, that sort of thing. But
You prove yourself.
we've definitely, I think, been accepted as part of the team, and I have some very, very good friends that are officers on the SWAT team, and there's a mutual respect, between us, and we're there to do the job just like they are. And
Now, do you wear body armor when you're working?
when I'm working the streets,
Yeah.
when I worked the medic unit, I did, but now that I'm on the rescue truck, I don't. I mean, I have it.
Yeah.
It's always on the truck with me, so I can put it on if I need to. But
Yeah. If you're working as a first responder, as a medic, and you have a vest, you have the ability to get one, please do, because you never know when shit's going to hit the fan, and you might be in that engagement, and you need to be protected. So if you can get them, get them. If you can wear them, wear them. Look out for you and your family. Yeah, man, it's crazy. So
Mark, can I jump in here real
yeah,
quick?
go ahead, Mike.
Oh, okay. Thanks. And yes.
Oh, by the way, you don't have to ask for permission.
Okay, I understand that. I understand. I got you. So I've had loss in my life, and I did a therapist and therapy, and I still don't know if I've. And first off, let me back up. Thank you for your service to our beautiful city. What you do is amazing. I'm in a totally different profession than you, and I doubt I could do what you do. But I've had loss in life, and you answered it a little bit, but I was just thinking about closure with that. I mean, because I still, with both my parents are passed away, and I'm an only child, and not woe is me, but I know what I did to try to get closure, which I've never had. And and I've been to the therapist, but I also heard you say, my question is, and I'm getting to it. Once you get sober, you start talking way too much.
Right?
But my question is, it sounded like they didn't give you much time off at all, or were you just wanting to jump right back into the fire or back into the field to get some closure? Or was it like, I need some therapy? Or I just was wondering, just a mental health perspective, because listening to Mark saying, the bottle took over for him. And yeah, I just was curious.
so we suck at taking care of ourselves. There are, I think it's a few things, right? So it's like an alpha male dominated workforce, right? So nobody wants to admit that they're not okay. I think there's a lot of reluctance to talk about how you feel, right? I mean, you don't want to be seen as, some.
You don't want to look weak.
Yeah, you don't want to look weak. You don't want to look like you can't hack it. And we do have resources that are available to us. So the day of the shooting, there is a critical incident stress management team it's a countywide resource, and it's made up of different first responders, there's firefighters, medics, and police officers. And so when we got back to the station after coming from the medical examiner's office, there were two guys from the critical incident stress management team that were standing at our station waiting for us to get back.
Yeah.
And I wasn't very nice to those guys.
Me neither.
I'm like, who are you guys? I'm like, oh, we're from the critical incident stress management team. We heard about your call today. We just want to talk about it. And I said, well, what's your background? Who are you? And one of them was a medic, like down in Upper St. Clair, who's probably never been to a shooting.
Yeah.
That wasn't a suicide, right?
Yeah.
And I was immediately dismissive. I was like, look, man, I appreciate you coming out, but like, I really don't we're not the same. Like, you can't relate to me.
I was the same way. Like, I was just like, who the fuck are you? Like,
Yeah.
you have no idea what these guys are going through. You had no idea how we're feeling about it because they're all our friends.
Yeah.
It's like, that was the hard part for me.
Right.
Like, I've been in and out of therapy my entire life, right? So, I was just like, it's too soon, man. Like,
Yeah.
you and I both know it takes 2 to 3 days before your
you're
mind
right.
mentally accepts what it's gone through and starts to understand what happened.
Exactly.
And
And Mark,
your
that's
memory recall.
and Mark, that's why I was asking the question because I was just as you were saying this, it would take me, for you just to get right back after it would take me a while. It would take me, I, I could not. I could not. I don't know anybody. I don't have any colleagues or old colleagues or friends that have been shot. And was a colleague and sounded like a really good friend of yours.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no way I could be at, your diving training on Monday. I'd have told him to punch dirt too.
I think for me it was, what do I do? Do I just sit at home and think about it, or do I get back on the horse, whether it's dive training or go work the medic unit as a distraction, And
Sure.
I think that was, I don't know if that was healthy, but that's what I did. I took one day off and then I kind of got back on the horse and I just kind of kept myself busy, and I think I just kind of
Buried it.
I avoided it as best I could and just kind of tried to move on. But
And I mean, I think that's what we all do well, I should say what I did because I'm not in that business anymore, but I think that's what all first responders do. There's one of two reactions to a traumatic incident. It's either A, I don't deal with it, or B, I get help and I deal with it.
Yeah.
I think you and I are very similar in that, where we just kind of like put it in that locked closet and try not to deal with it, right? But that's a dangerous place to be.
It is.
Because when that shit comes out, you lose the wheels fall off the wagon, you're in rehab and your life's falling apart, Hopefully you never deal with that. I know you've changed your life quite a bit in the last few years. Because I know you and I used to get pretty banged up.
Oh yeah.
And I miss those days. But it's a dangerous line that first responders dance.
Yeah.
It's a very dangerous line because, and correct me if I'm wrong, some people are strong enough to bury it and be okay. Yeah. But a lot of us aren't. A lot of us try to think we're strong enough to bury it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think they're okay when they're not.
Like I used to tell my ex-wife, like, oh, I'm fine. And then look at me, how many years later?
Yeah, it's, I think we have a lot of work to do, when it comes to addressing the mental health of first responders. And, I think we as a culture need to kind of get over ourselves and realize that, like, we see some really fucked up stuff and it's okay to be fucked up by the things that we see and the things that we deal with at work. I think that's obstacle number one, is to make people comfortable with admitting that they're not okay. And I think the second step to that is having good resources available for us to deal with.
And I mean, the city's made steps in that direction. From what I've heard, like we had Pat Shaw in there with the fire department. Yep. You got these, you got stuff like Better Health on the internet now. Like therapy's accepted.
Yeah, I mean, we have the police union has a members assistance team. Our union has a members assistance team, but people aren't contacting that team as often as they should.
Well, it's like you said. You mentioned that there's a lot of mental health in your business. There's also a lot of substance abuse.
Yep.
I know when I was a cop, that's how I dealt with shit.
Yep.
I medicated, self-medicated. And it's a dangerous, dangerous road because, all it does, in my experience, is it just holds you in that moment.
It does. Yeah, you're
reliving it over and over and over again.
With it, you're just
never processing, processing.
Yeah, you're kicking the can down the road.
Yeah, and I mean, it's good to hear that they're doing the things. When I tried to get sober the first time, I think it was like 2017. I was ashamed. I felt weak. I felt like people looked at me differently. I felt like people treated me differently. And that's all mental. That's all on me because of the alpha male. I got to be the one that puts on that face. I got to be the one that just keeps on pushing forward. I can't let myself lapse. I can't be weak.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that they all have to work on as a whole in public safety and in veterans and the armed forces, is finding a way to make, like, providing resources that will allow the employee, the professional, to feel like they can share. Like, you tell me I can call some guy on a phone and I can tell him about my demons. I'm like, no, I know nothing about this guy.
Right, exactly.
But forming like peer groups, like I've always thought that, like Pittsburgh police should have like their own, like quote unquote AA organization within the department.
Yeah.
You know, like completely anonymous, don't talk, run by alcoholics and run by people, and then, not run by the city, but like inside like a group of those officers
Yeah.
building something. And when I went to rehab, recently, I found out that there are some organizations out there. There are AA organizations for law enforcement. They're just secretive.
Yeah.
They don't promote it.
Should.
They don't go out and say, "Hey, here's a flyer. Come to our meeting."
Right.
Because it's like invite only. Really, it's like somebody that drinks, and you find out they're an alcoholic, and they find out you're an alcoholic, and then they say, "Hey, listen, we have this meeting."
Yeah.
Because I know it's probably the same for you. You don't want to talk about your shit in an AA meeting at 616
Yeah. Right.
West North Avenue at Trinity Church
Yep.
with a bunch of people that you probably saw or dealt with,
Yeah.
or may have dealt with, or you don't share experiences with.
Exactly. People that can't relate to what you're dealing with, and I think that's probably the obstacle that we deal with, is that there's a very small number of people who we feel comfortable talking to, and it's our coworkers, it's our colleagues,
And
there's just not enough good resources out there. I mean, we're doing better, but we got a long way to go.
I mean, I think we become codependent on each other
We have.
in a negative way.
Yeah.
Hey, John, I'm having a really bad day. Let's go hit the bar.
Yeah.
And that's why I think substance abuse is so huge in first responders and veterans, is because it comes back to that. I need to be around people that understand me. I need to be around people that know the kind of shit that I've dealt with.
100%.
I can talk to them.
Yep.
But I can't, I met Mike, a couple months ago. I probably would never, when I was drinking, talk to Mike about my fucking shit.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even talk to Mike's wife about my shit.
Yeah.
I talked to you about it. I talked to Lance about it. I talked to the guys that and it's really sad in this day and age that when you are a first responder or a veteran, you feel like you have to deal with things by yourself.
It is. I agree.
You being the president of the union, what have you seen internally besides, the critical incident team and stuff like that? What have they done for you guys to give you like more outlets for mental health? Because here's a crazy stat. I checked it. This is about 6 months ago. I checked it. CDC said that 18% of all law enforcement officers are diagnosed with PTSD.
I think that's probably a low number.
You know what? You know what's wrong with
what I
that
was gonna
number?
say.
You know what's wrong with that number? It's people that are diagnosed.
it's
People that have gone and talked about it.
Yeah.
And
How many haven't been diagnosed?
And that's what they don't do. They don't talk about it. So I would say, in my own mind, that's 100%.
Yeah.
Everybody
Oh, for sure.
everybody has some sort of PTSD.
Yeah.
It may be minor.
Right.
It may be like me, and I'm a total bitch.
Yeah.
And I lose my shit. But I think everybody has a little bit of PTSD if you work in the armed forces or if you're a first responder. I just think it's impossible not to.
Yeah. So I agree 100%. So we as a union have formed a members assistance program. So we have the Pittsburgh EMS MAP members assistance program, and so it's made up of a handful of paramedics of all walks of life. We got white guys, we got black guys, we got men, we have women. Guys have been on the job 30 years. Guys have been on the job for 2 years or whatever, and anytime that we're aware, you hear a pediatric cardiac arrest go out, like we're getting in touch with those people to make sure that they're all right. We're contacting them that day. We're following up with them a few days later. We advocate for them with our administration. So if somebody's not well after a call like that, we will deal with the administration. I think that makes it a lot easier on the member because your upper administrator in the police department, like what relationship did you have with your chief or your deputy chief? You never saw those guys, right?
Oh, after Nate Harper. After Nate Harper, you never saw him.
Right.
Nate Harper was the only real chief in the last 15 years in the city of Pittsburgh. You hear me?
But so I think that, one of the obstacles that we deal with is, we have these members who are having a hard time with something, and our upper administration, which is not in the field, which really they don't have the relationship with the blue shirts, the guys in the streets. So these members aren't comfortable with going to an administrator that they have no relationship with and opening up to them that they need help. And so we act as sort of the middleman. When we have a member who's having trouble, who needs some time off, we handle all that stuff.
So it's basically peer
Yeah.
It's like
It's
a
a peer
peer
support-
it's a
it's a
peer
peer
it's a peer
support
support
program.
program. You guys basically keep it amongst yourselves and you figure it out.
We do, but we do involve the administration.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had to take we've had to send people to rehab. We've had to have people taken off taken off the schedule for an extended period of time so that they can get through what they're dealing with. So we kind of act as the conduit for that, and we make sure that their time is covered. We kind of handle the administrative back end sort of stuff to make sure that these folks are they're not losing pay. They're getting what they need. So
And
that
that's
they
the great thing about FMLA.
Yeah.
Because if you guys don't know, if you need treatment for substance abuse or mental health, you can take a medical leave through FMLA. I believe you get 12 weeks guaranteed through the federal government.
Yep.
And if it's medical, you will get short-term disability while you're in treatment. And the only thing you have to do is contact your health provider and say, hey, I'm an alcoholic. I need treatment. You don't have to tell your boss what exactly is going on. You just got to tell them you need medical leave. And then you put the paperwork in and let your healthcare do the work for you. That's why you pay $500 a month. But yeah, FMLA, it will save you. So don't be afraid to look into that if you're struggling with mental health or any type of substance abuse, or if you just need some time away, you can get personal leave. Now, I do believe personal leave is not paid. I'm not an expert on it, but check out FMLA. It is a great resource. It's what I used when I went to rehab back in May of last year, and it worked out great.
Yeah, and that's what we do. We, most people are unfamiliar with what's available to them, and so if we have a member that's having a problem, we can let them know that here's what we can do. We can get you off paid. Nobody wants to lose money,
Yeah.
and so I think that's a barrier for people.
Oh, hell yeah.
And trying to get the help.
Yeah, nobody wants to, take a $20,000 hit for
Right.
being gone for 3 weeks,
And so we,
or a month
we try
or 3
to,
months or whatever.
we try to steer those people to, to the resources that are available to them. Most people don't even realize, that there is help available. So, the union's members assistance program is a good resource for those folks who need help, but they're not sure how to navigate, the system.
Real quick, what time do you got to be out of here?
Whatever.
Okay,
Got nothing going on.
We're going to keep going. So outside of, excuse me, outside of your job, what do you do for stress relief? What do you and your friends and the people that you work with, like, granted, we never get away from the people we work with, right?
Yeah.
Like you tend to dive in with them to help your mental health, right? What do you personally do?
I like to travel, so I'm an avid scuba diver. So
You and Capitz.
yeah. My girlfriend scuba dives.
Really?
Yeah. So
So we're going to be watching the news for a female disappearing in like some ocean somewhere?
No. So so I go to the last couple years I've done 1 or 2 trips a year. So I go down to the Caribbean, Bon area. I've been
Yep.
going there for probably close to 15 years. I go down there. I went to the Maldives last year, which is over in the Indian Ocean. And we're doing that again this year. So that's my disconnect time. Like the phone is in the hotel room. I'm not dealing with 30 text messages when I wake up in the morning. I'm not dealing with emails. That's like I'm underwater. Leave me the fuck alone. Nobody's calling me. Nobody's texting me. It's a really good disconnect. And you're right. It's when I go I go to the Maldives. I think there's probably gonna be like a dozen city medics there. So it's once again it's you're decompressing with the people that you are most comfortable with, and it's great that my girlfriend is into scuba diving. Girls I've dated in the past weren't scuba divers, so so it's nice to be able to go with her. You're in these tropical locations. It's sunny. It's
Recharge the batteries.
yeah, exactly, man.
What would you tell someone coming on to Pittsburgh EMS? What kind of advice would you give them, just as a veteran and an experienced veteran and a solid veteran? What would you tell them? Like, what kind of advice would you give somebody who wants to take this responsibility on their shoulders?
I think just be honest with yourself and listen to yourself, like self-reflect and realize that it's okay to not be okay. And I think that too often we like Mike was saying, too often we just come to work the next day and we try to just kind of stay in our routine. not realizing that we have shit that needs to be dealt with and we're not dealing with it. And so, we see the absolute worst that society has to offer. We see it, we live it, we deal with it every single day, and it's going to catch up to you sooner rather than later. Nobody's immune to it. And, it's important to have a healthy way of dealing with it. We've had guys commit suicide. We've had people that have drug problems. We've had people that have alcohol problems. And, it's important for people to have a way to deal with those things. It's important for people to realize that it's okay to get help. And, help's not, in a baggie of weed. Help's not in the bottom of a bottle. But that's what we tend to turn to because it's easy, it's available. I've got, the liquor collection I have at my house. It's right there. I come home.
Yeah, when I stayed with you, you're like, don't touch that. Yeah,
But,
he let me stay with him when I was getting divorced twice.
I think 3 times actually.
Okay, 3 times.
Once at my
3
apartment
times,
and
3
twice
times.
at my house.
3 times.
But yeah, I think we tend to do what's convenient and easy, and that's not what's going to get us where we need to be.
Yeah.
And so, that's what I would tell people is just be honest with yourself. It's okay to not be okay, and take care of yourself.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I like it. So let's get a little bit off target here.
Sure.
So law enforcement, I always like to bring this shit up. What do you think of what's going on in the law enforcement community right now with what you see around Pittsburgh and with defund the police, and we have different political beliefs, you and I, so we're not going to get into that. But, with everything that's going on with law enforcement and, the way that, officers are, I don't know if you ever watch this guy named Dominic Izzo on Instagram.
I'm not familiar with him.
He's a very inflammatory guy. He's got a lot of good information, but he, one day he's like saying good things about the police. Next day he's saying stuff like it looks like they're all trying to, go on calls and shoot people. Like it's crazy the way he talks. So like I see a lot of stuff in social media. That's where I don't watch the news.
Yeah.
So I get a lot of my info off of social media, and all I see anymore is like, all these sites and all these pages that are like talking shit about law enforcement and saying that they're all bad and saying that we should take all their money away. What's your take on law enforcement?
So, I mean, I think that, and maybe I'm a bit biased. I have a lot of respect for, law enforcement. I work, I'm on the Pittsburgh SWAT team. I've, some of my best friends are, folks in law enforcement. And, I think that law enforcement is very similar to EMS in that we deal with a lot of mundane shit most of the time, but your next call could be an active shooter. Your next call could be, chasing down somebody that's armed and dangerous, who doesn't want to get into, who isn't going to jail. And so, I think that with social media and everybody having a camera phone, I think a lot of stuff that we see that perpetuates this, like, ACAB, all cops are bastards. Like, I think a lot of that stuff is taken out of context. I mean, you've taken people into custody who didn't want to go into custody, and it's not pretty. And so when you see a 10-second clip of a cop forcibly putting somebody in handcuffs, it's not pretty. We lose a lot of context when we don't see what led up to that interaction. There's shitty cops out there. There's shitty medics out there. There's shitty doctors. There's shitty lawyers. Like every profession has people who are not in it for the right reasons. People who don't care. People who don't care about doing a good job. And so I think that those folks, kind of put a stain on everybody else. But I think that there's no cop who puts a uniform on and says, I hope I can go to work and shoot somebody today. There's not a single cop that wants to deal with that. But I think with social media and everybody recording everything that happens, I think that, a lot of that stuff gets blown out of proportion. And I think it paints a negative light on, a lot of people. I think, one bad apple doesn't necessarily define who everybody is in law enforcement. I mean, there's been shit that's George Floyd, that should have never happened. And,
Agreed.
But these high profile incidents definitely, I think, reflect negatively on law enforcement as a whole, and I think it's undeservedly. I don't think that it's fair to paint every cop as a bad cop because something happened in Michigan or Florida or whatever. That has no bearing on what happens here. And I think most cops are just like you and I. We want to go to work. We want to do a good job. We want to go home at the end of the shift. We don't want to get hurt. We don't want to hurt anybody. You know, but things happen, and I think that when a police officer has to make a split-second decision based on very limited information, and then the news media and the courts, the court of public opinion, has days and weeks to analyze a decision that was made by a police officer in a split second, I think that's a little bit unfair.
Yeah, I mean, in general, first responders have seconds to make a decision and a lifetime to think about it.
Exactly.
And I think that's one of the things that's lost in translation is, I think the general public, not as a whole, I'm not going to do a sweeping generalization, but a lot of people in the general public look at things as like, oh, well, they should have known better, or that's a horrible decision. It's like nobody knows, as you said, with social media and media, nobody knows what that officer is going through in that split second where they have to make a decision. You face the same thing every day. You get there. The difference is you're not, like, paramedics aren't going there to handle a violent problem. You're going there to save someone's life, and like I said before, much respect for what you do, man. Like, you're phenomenal at your job.
Appreciate that.
It's crazy, but so I had Pat Shaw in here, and just he said nothing bad about you guys. He was very awesome. There's always been this stigmas. Police don't get along with firemen don't get with the paramedics. Like, what's your opinion on that with the paramedics and the fire thing?
Oh man, we could talk for hours about this.
Go into it, brother. Just be nice.
Yeah, no, I'm always nice. So I think, I talked at the beginning about, being a rescue paramedic and how Pittsburgh EMS is unique in that we do all technical rescue, where that's traditionally something that's done by the fire bureau in most other cities. And so I think that our fire bureau, good guys. Some of my best friends are firefighters. I've been groomsmen in their weddings, kids that I've known since, playing Little League baseball or now city firefighters. And I don't have an issue with those guys. But I do believe that there is, these guys want to do technical rescue. They want to do the specialties that we have. They want to do river rescue. And so I think that sometimes they creep a little bit into our realm of work. They do things that they maybe shouldn't. I think that, I think it all comes down to respect. Like, I'm not trying to do the fire department's job. I'm not trying to do the work of a police officer. I'm on the SWAT team. I'm on river rescue with police, but I'm there and I function in my capacity. Yeah. And I think that sometimes, when we get to, when there's a rescue in the city, I think sometimes some of the firefighters creep a little bit into, they kind of cross that line a little bit into doing things that maybe they shouldn't. But I think, by and large, I've not had issues with those guys on calls. I'm not a very well liked guy over there because of my position as president of the union, but I've not had. That's never been an issue on calls and on scenes. That's never been a problem. So when it comes to working together, like when it's time to do shit, like we get it done. And so all the little bullshit that exists between us, that's not a problem when it comes to taking care of somebody like right now.
Well, I remember when the Swift Water program came out, that was a big issue.
It was. Because
that was something that stereotypically you guys handled.
Yes.
And the guy that ran that program, who I'm talking about, you could tell that there was some animosity.
Who are you talking about?
JS?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He had some, I don't like to call people out, so.
Yeah.
He had some major issues with it, and he was teaching firemen and, police officers how to do swiftwater rescue. Like, what was that? I'm curious, what did you guys hear about that when that whole thing was going on?
So that The expansion of swiftwater rescue and flood response was, you mentioned it earlier. We're very reactive to things, and so that happened after that flood on
Washington Boulevard.
A couple people died there, and so the big bosses downtown decided that we needed to expand the swiftwater rescue capability, flood response capability of the city by training firefighters and police officers, to do that work. And we weren't happy about it. Our contract says that rescue is our responsibility, and it lays out water rescue, vehicle extrication, elevator rescue, rope rescue, all that stuff. And so, we weren't happy about that. But it is what it is. It happened, and the police team has been disbanded as of year and a half ago.
I heard.
Or so, but fire still has their guys, and we obviously have our guys, and we get along.
I mean, I think it was a great idea in theory because, in that situation with that flood, like it happened right in front of our station.
Yeah.
So if we would have had the technologies and the basic throw ropes, throw bags, PPE to wear, the flotation devices, like that is why I think it was a good idea. Is because like sometimes you may not be able to be the first one there.
Yeah.
And I get where the firemen are. I get how they think about it. Like, that person needs saved right now.
Right.
And it's not a pride thing. It's like I got to do my job.
Yeah.
So I can get both sides of that. Your side and the fire side.
And we've never had an issue like I don't expect. If somebody's whatever in need of immediate rescue, and a fucking mailman rescues them, like I'm not going to be mad at the mailman.
Do what you got to do.
How many times have you pulled somebody unconscious out of a car that was, catching fire or whatever because you guys got there and nobody else is there, right? Like I'm not mad about that.
Yeah.
I think what the issue that we have is whenever the city starts spending big sums of money on training and equipping people to do somebody else's work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like
Overstepping the line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I wouldn't begrudge anybody, cop, fireman, dog catcher, plumber, whatever, for dragging somebody out of a car before I got there. I mean, like, if it needs
Well, you're a
done,
reasonable human being.
if it needs done, it needs done. Yeah.
You're reasonable. So back to the fact that you're the union president. What is that like? Battling with this city that we live in to get the things you need.
It has its moments. It's I enjoy it. I think it takes the right kind of person to advocate for the membership. Dealing with the stuff that we talked about earlier with like members assistance programs and stuff like that. I think that's important. Contract we're in contract negotiations right now. We've been without a contract since December 31st of last year. So there's that. Dealing with our administration, within the EMS bureau can be challenging at times. Dealing with the downtown administration can be challenging at times, and we're incredibly short-staffed right now. We're overworked, underpaid, and so it's definitely has its moments.
I'm sure, knowing you, you've made a few enemies.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But you do your job well, because if you're not pissing people off, you're not doing your job as a union president.
I mean, my job is to advocate for my membership, and if that offends people,
Well, I mean, the problem is the city of Pittsburgh and all major cities, they're just penny pinchers. They don't want to spend money on things that they don't deem reasonable. You've got to fight for everything. Like the police department, I think up until like 3 years ago was making like $64,000 a year.
Yeah.
You guys got a big raise.
Yeah.
And then the police got a big raise.
Yeah.
Well, not a big raise, but a decent raise.
they're still way behind.
They're so far behind.
suburban
They're so far behind. I mean, you got departments in Pittsburgh making $100,000 a year to show up for 40 hours a week, and all they do is drive around all night and sit and watch videos on their phone.
Yeah.
Like Upper St. Clair, Bethel Park. All these departments that don't get the crazy calls that the city gets.
Yeah.
In an average day, how many calls do you think you go through if you like averaged out a week?
I would bet the average medic on a medic unit is probably running 8 calls in a 12-hour period. average. I mean, obviously, Medic 14 downtown runs over 6,000 calls a year. It's the busiest unit in the city. And, I mean, those guys will run 10, 15 or more calls in a 12-hour shift.
Wow.
Because they cover the downtown neighborhood. So,
A lot of man down.
yeah, exactly. So they pull up their patients on the sidewalk and they drive them. Their transport's 5 minutes up to Mercy. So the time that they spend on calls is a lot shorter than, say, us driving out to East Hills Drive from Medic 1 and then transporting that person to Presby. I mean, that chews up a lot of time. So a lot of our time is spent on those calls when you have those longer transport times. But the guys downtown, I mean, they just really get hammered because they're right on top of the call. And they're right down the street from the hospital, so they're just able to run way more calls in a shift than units that have longer transport times. So,
Last question for you. So for longevity in your career field, what would be your advice for someone? I know I've asked it different ways, but for someone coming in that wants to make this a career and wants to retire doing this, what would be like the pitfalls that they could run into?
I mean, injury. We have one of the highest injury rates of any city employee. I think only refuse has a higher incident of workplace injury than we do. So I mean, we're dealing with a lot of like lifting and moving people that are in precarious positions. I mean, you get a big guy who's wedged between the toilet and the bathroom wall, and we have to get him out. So I think we see a lot of back injuries, shoulder injuries, knee injuries. And so I think being strong is important, but also understanding body mechanics and understanding how to lift and move somebody the proper way so you don't throw out your back or so you don't tear your shoulder or so you don't blow out a knee. We have so many people who've had ACL tears, MCL tears, shoulder surgery, a lot of people with back injuries who've been doing this for a while. And so I think that, asking for help, if you get that big fat person down and it's just you and your partner, like call the fire department, have them send 4 guys over. I'd rather be picking up, a big person with a couple other people helping than you and I trying to do it and one of us getting hurt. So, it comes back to that, we don't want to ask for help.
Yeah.
But I think taking care of yourself, physically, taking care of yourself mentally, I think are very important things for somebody who wants to make this a career. For somebody who wants to do this for a long time, is just trying to be healthy physically and mentally. That's paramount, I think.
Okay. Got one more for you.
Yeah.
You just brought it up. Physical fitness. Mm-hmm. Does the EMS have like any type of ongoing physical fitness testing after you get out of the academy, like any annual, biannual, anything like that?
So people who are on our specialties, so River Rescue has an annual physical that we have to do. So it's probably the most in-depth physical that I've ever had. So you go to your doctor for your annual physical, and they check your vitals and don't really do a whole lot. For River Rescue, we get a 12-lead EKG every year. We get blood work done. We get a chest X-ray. We get a pulmonary function test. We get our vision tested, not just visual acuity. We get peripheral vision, color blindedness. We get a hearing test. So we get all that stuff done. But your average street medic, they go through during the hiring process, they go through the medical examination that they go through, and that's it.
Yeah, it's still. I talked to Pat about this when he was on, and I'm like, it just still shocks me that in this day and age where there's so many inherent genetic issues, and we're a country that is just a bunch of fat people in general. Like we're obese is okay when it's really not okay because it's unhealthy. It's going to kill you, right? Like the fact that there is no proactive physical fitness testing or interdepartmental practices in place to make sure that people stay healthy. Instead, it's just, how many times have you driven down the street and you see a cop out on a traffic stop or on something, and you're like, how does that dude fit in that car?
Yeah.
Like, how does he get up in the morning? How does that guy walk around? How does he see his dick when he goes to pee?
Right.
Like, it's crazy how many unhealthy people are in first responder units.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's it's just a lifestyle. I mean, it's you know what it's like. You're running from call to call to call. It's hard to eat well. Sleep schedule is fucked at best. I mean, we work a 12-hour schedule, but the 12s are 18s, really. And so, my typical 3-day weekend when I work, it's 3 18s. So I work I work daylight this month, so I'll work 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. I'll take a 6-hour overtime shift, so I work till midnight. You get a late call, get out of work at 12:30, quarter to 1. I got to be back in at 6 in the morning, so go home, take a shower, eat something, sleep for, 3 hours maybe, if you're lucky, and then come back in the next day and do it all over again. And so it's the lifestyle it's not conducive to being healthy.
Well, also,
It's hard to have time to go to the gym. It's hard to have time to eat right. I mean, you try to pack, like decent food to take to work, and it sits in the refrigerator, and you're running call to call, so you end up, going to Wendy's or whatever, going and grabbing pizza or whatever you can get between calls, and the salad and the salmon that you have sitting in the fridge, you eat that later, or maybe you don't eat it at all.
and it's kind of funny because when you guys were getting paid dirt wages and police were getting paid dirt wages, like everybody's like, oh man, I can't wait till we get a raise, I'll work less. And what happens when you get a raise? Everybody works more.
Yeah.
Because now instead of making 100,000, you can make 150,000.
Yep.
And it's crazy because I remember when I was a cop, I'd be like, yeah, man, we get a raise, I'm going to cut back on hours. And then I just quit because I'm stupid. But, now working as a truck driver, like, I make decent money, but like I work as much as I can. It's really sad.
I think we get, we get used to that lifestyle. I mean,
I don't know what it's like to work an 8-hour day.
I mean, I've been working overtime. I've doubled my base pay for as long as I can remember. And so everybody's got new car. I mean, I'm about to get a brand new truck here and, probably in a week or two. So, I mean, everybody has, brand new cars. You know what it's like. Everybody's got brand new cars.
Everybody's got to have the best things.
Yeah. Everybody's got boats and motorcycles.
What are you going to get now?
Just another Ram.
I'm not a Dodge fan. You know me, I'm a Toyota and Honda fan.
The new Tundras are nice, though.
Yeah, 90,000.
I know.
Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Toyota, drop your prices. You're fucking stupid. All right, cool. Well, Mike, you got anything to ask John?
You basically hit all the stuff I was going to ask. I did have two things, though. So when you become labor union president, now is there, do you have to, because I don't know, do you have to, campaign for that? Or how does it get picked? I mean, is it like a popularity contest, or do you, have a...
No, we have an election every 2 years.
Okay.
For all of our positions. So we have a president, vice president, recording secretary, financial secretary, treasurer. We have trustees, grievance guys. So, yeah, there is an election, and I guess it's probably a popularity contest to some extent. But I think it's very hard to be elected as president having no prior experience. You know what I mean? So you end up kind of working your way up through the ranks. So, I started I was a grievance officer, and then I became grievance chair whenever our grievance chair got promoted into an administrative position. Then our vice president got promoted into an administrative position. So the president appointed me to be the vice president, and I was his vice president until he got promoted into an administrative position. Then I assumed the position of president for the rest of his term, and then I was elected as president for, at the next election, and then I was just reelected again back in April.
Yeah, then because you said you're 42, right?
Yes.
That's probably pretty young to be a president of a union, or am I completely off? I've never worked in a union.
He's got 23 years on.
23 years. Okay.
He's like a seasoned veteran, so he's got the experience, no doubt.
Yeah. Okay.
It's not like our government where they elect an 80-year-old guy that can't see straight. It's based on he's got the experience.
Yeah.
I don't think there's really an age range for that. It's pretty much just based off your experience and what people think you can do.
Because I've worked in fields before that they promote, and it's it'd be like a 26-year-old getting promoted, and I would just shake my head. So
yeah, it's called the Pittsburgh Police Department.
Yeah. And that's kind of where I was going with that. And other thing, I've got buddies out there. you keep saying girlfriends plural. Where are you finding these girls? Because I've got to reach out to my buddies and like have them hang out with you.
Well, you're in a good spot. Hey, a lot of women, that you know are already fucked up, have issues. You guys could talk about everything. I mean,
Because John, you have said it a few times, like, yeah, these girlfriends. I'm like, good for him.
Nurses.
Okay.
Nurses, man. The ERs are just packed with nurses.
go to Jack's on like a Monday morning at like 7
7 a.m.
o'clock when they all come over from the hospital.
Yep.
Okay, I will keep that in mind.
Just remember, Jack's is a bar.
Yes.
So, you know,
Not like Jack's Pizza or
correct.
Jack's Monastery or Jack's
Jack-
Hardware.
Jack's Bar, famous for the nurses and the doctors.
Okay, I'll let them know that.
All right, John. Well, listen, man. Hey, I really appreciate you coming on today. Thanks for taking the time out. Thanks for opening up about 4409. I know that's tough for you to deal with.
Yeah.
But do you have any last words for the audience? Anything you want to tell them?
I don't think so. This was cool. I've never done anything like this before, so I appreciate you having me.
Definitely. I'd like to have you on again down the road sometime
Yeah,
if you
for
feel like it. So Jon Atkinson, 23 years as a city medic, scuba diver, awesome guy. If you're looking to get a job in Pittsburgh EMS, reach out to the city, get the information. You can call down there to what's the office that you have to call? Recruitment.
Yeah, civil service.
Civil service and get the information.
It's all online.
Yeah, I think if you go online, just check it out. But other than that, we appreciate you guys checking in with us again. We're rolling strong. Kels, we'll see you in a couple weeks. Mike, thank you. And just remember, there's always a seat here at the Steel City Roundtable for you guys. We love you, and we hope to see you down the road.